Hello and welcome to the Author's Review. My name is Renee Bobb and I'm the host of this motivational and educational TV talk show where I bring to you, the viewing audience, guests who have written, marketed, and published their own books. My goal is to give you the tools that you need for those of you that are seriously interested and know that you have a story to tell. I want to provide you with people who have their own story to tell, but also they took their story and they put it into a book. So I thank you so much for tuning in, and we welcome your comments and your suggestions. You can email them to me at bobbrenee@yahoo.com. You can also visit my website at www.reneebobb.com, and you can also reach me directly at area code 804-998-8014. And be sure to look out on our website for our upcoming National Christian Writers Workshop and Book Expo. That's a mouthful, but it's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be dynamic. So my guest that I have today is Miss Juliette Davis, and she's the president and founder of Juliette Davis Ministry, which is a multifaceted ministry that specializes in leadership development, training, and sound biblical teaching. She is also the author of The Journey of Overcomer. I welcome you to the show, Juliette.
Thank you so much, Renee. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me about your book, The Journey of an Overcomer.
Journey of an Overcomer is my personal account of having been in a relationship in the 20-something years of my life, graduating from college, living in a new city, and met a young man at church. And he was just very dynamic. That friendship developed into a relationship over the course of 3 years. And just as we were planning our wedding, he became very ill. And so we began to seek out medical advice and doctor's appointments and lots of prescriptions. And then finally, one of the physicians said, well, by process of elimination, I really want to ask if you would be willing to submit to this new test, because this was in the mid to late 80s when this took place. And he agreed to do so, and it was then that he found out that he was HIV positive.
And then what was your immediate response when you got the news?
My immediate response was mixed. There was one part of me that really obviously was very saddened by the news. Everything that I had heard in the media at that time was very negative as it pertains to the survival rate of someone who was HIV positive or who had AIDS. There was lots of pictures of people who had lost lots of weight, and there was really no way to cure them. And so I understood that much about the disease, and of course was deeply grieved by it, because this was someone that I was planning to spend the rest of my life with. On the other hand, Renee, I must say that it was a sweet moment, in that prior to this relationship, I had decided through my faith and my relationship with God that I would no longer engage in sex outside of marriage. And that decision literally saved my life.
Wow. Now, did you stay with him as he went through the transition, when he was diagnosed?
Yes, I did. It was a decision that I made prayerfully. It's not something that I recommend to anyone, because it really does have to be a faith decision. But in the scheme of our relationship, I believe wholeheartedly that he would have done the same thing for me, that our relationship was such that if I needed him to be there, he would have been there. And so while the decision was made, we still had to deal with the reality of the diagnosis. And our first priority was to begin to seek out expert medical care so that he could get back, his health. In other words, to be able to regain the strength that he needed to live, a relatively normal life. At that time, he had lost quite a bit of weight. He was experiencing what they now call the wasting syndrome, which is usually one of the first things that people experience at that time, at least. And so we wanted to get right on, dealing with his medical care. But my commitment to him was, I know that you would be here for me, and I believe that, God is going to help us through this, and I'm going to stand with you through this experience.
Wow. And so he didn't take it as a death sentence. It sounded like you guys really became proactive.
Yes, we did, and that's something I really want your viewers to hear, is that it's not a death sentence. Certainly, lots of progress has been made from a medical science standpoint since the time that he was diagnosed, and people are living full lives with their HIV status. So what we began to do is not only get on top of the medical care, but also begin to try and find ways to live healthier, things that you may not normally pay attention to as far as diet and rest and exercise. Those are things that we began to incorporate in our lives. And then keep in mind, we were in the process of planning a wedding. So our wedding was just a few months away when he tested positive. So we had a lot to do.
And did you go forward with the wedding?
I did.
Wow.
I did. We were married in August of 1989 and had a beautiful wedding in Houston, Texas.
Wow, that is exciting. And so what really made you, because a lot of people thinking about that, they wouldn't have gone forward with the process. So what was it inside of you that said, you know what, I can handle this to go forward with being married?
Well, I really have to say that the only reason why I was able to do that was because of my relationship with God. I don't attribute it to any other factor, because at the time, remember, the disease was so new that so many people really didn't understand the dynamics of the disease. There's still lots of fear and phobia today about it, but certainly at that time, I mean, it was so bad that you really couldn't even think about eating in a public restaurant because you might catch it from the glasses, or using public restrooms, or working in an office environment. And we now know that none of those activities would lead to the transmission of the disease. But at that time, I didn't even know that. I just knew that this was someone that I saw as not just my husband-to-be, but he was my brother in the Lord. And I really had seen God do some tremendous things just in the time of the course of our relationship as far as ministry was concerned. And I really believed that this was what God would have me do, because I knew that if the shoe were on the other foot, he would definitely been there for me.
And so from that incident, you actually have birthed the book, but it also has, you do some speaking engagements where you talk to young people about AIDS and HIV.
Absolutely, Renee, because I believe it is so important. I mean, here we are into, over 25 years of dealing with this crisis, and there are still people who are infected and don't know it. There are people who are unknowingly infecting other people. The latest statistics say that there's 20 million people have died since 1981 as a result of this disease. There are over 950 million people right now who are infected. And, some 220 of those people don't know that they are infected. And so when you talk about those kind of statistics, it really says to you that we still have a lot of work to do in the area of education.
And the interesting thing about those statistics is that, we think that the AIDS virus is really bad in Africa. But look at the statistics right here in America. Look at the statistics right here in Virginia. Those numbers are very high.
They are. They are. And the thing that is so sobering about this disease is that in the beginning, there was lots of public service announcements. I mean, you really got the information. You saw the pictures. You saw the news accounts. The whole world was, grappling with this issue. Now you don't see it very much at all. And so the silence is deafening, is what I say. Because while we're not talking about it, it's very much taking place in every aspect of our lives, and people's lives are being impacted, and there's no real communication that's taking place about it. And we have to begin to give voice to what needs to happen so that we can stop the spread of this disease.
Now, not only a person that has been affected has an obligation to kind of, share with their partner that they've been affected. Do you feel like the churches, they're doing as much as they need to do in the community? Because, again, we know there are people in the church that actually are HIV positive. Do you feel like the churches are doing what they need to do to educate their congregation about the disease?
Well, no, Renee, I don't. And that's an unfortunate thing for me to say, but that's the reality of it. I think that the church is really the ideal place where the communication can go forth about this disease. Number one, it's the ideal place because that's where people of faith gather. And if there ever were a time in your life when you needed the faith to be able to stand in the midst of an adverse situation, it's when you get that kind of diagnosis. It's the place where someone should be able to come and tap into the power of people who have the ability to pray to the only one who is able to keep you in the midst of that situation. And so That's why I'm so passionate about the church getting involved, because to me it is the ideal place. It will provide the kind of atmosphere for the individual who is infected as well as